Thank you so much. Good afternoon to everyone here in the group. I am Toya Mancinetti. I am the coordinator of natural resources of COICA in the territories of the Amazon Basin. I want to thank the presence of everyone here because it's very important, this event, where we will be learning about the monitoring in indigenous territories for an early warning system for COICA. So everybody, welcome to this important event, especially for us from COICA and for all the indigenous peoples of the Amazon Basin. Thank you. Thanks a lot for your words and your message. We want to welcome as well to Abram, the coordinator, the regional coordinator of Amazon 2.0 project. Please, Braulio, can you have the word? Good afternoon with everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, and we want to thank the council of directors from COICA and all the members of Amazon 2.0 and guests in general. I think this event is very important in general because this year where we're concluding Amazon 2.0, we have been working in an articulated way, in an institutional way, COICA as a representative of the indigenous peoples in the Amazon Basin to reactivate the economy during and after COVID pandemics. I think it is very important to share the experiences and many of the progress actions. It's a lot of learning information that we need to share. We think we're like-minded together with COICA because we believe that the forests need to be guaranteed to continue existing because they need to guarantee the rights of the indigenous peoples in their territories. It is a great step we have given now, and we consider the next progresses can be also great. And want to thank Paulina, who is in charge of this institutional coordination. Thanks a lot again. Good afternoon to everyone. Thanks, Braulio, for your words. And now we want to start with this workshop, and we want to start with COICA. We have Eulogio, technician from IDESAT and COICA. And we need to expose with this experience of this territory of early monitoring in their territories of indigenous peoples. Please keep your microphones deactivated during the presentation. If you have any question, please do it through the chat where we can gather all the questions. Please disable your microphones. Valdir, I think you have your microphone disabled. Okay, good afternoon. Paulina, Braulio, everyone here. Thanks a lot for this opportunity. And once again, you have coordinator, as you said, the importance to make visible the process of the holistic vision, let's say, of the indigenous peoples in the Amazon Basin that is reuniting all the peoples in their territory and environment. And what Braulio said as well in relation to the importance of articulating actions, not only from the holistic vision, but also from the vision of the collaborators and NGOs that have this vision to link some of the processes that are being developed by the COICA and some of the member countries, as is the case of Peru from IDC in a national level. And from some time ago, COICA has been implementing a virtual
It
platform
goes
that
beyond being
uh,
able to visualize
beyond
not just the information
bringing the
produced by the member
visualization
countries, the
of the
organizations, the
organizations which
indigenous
are
members, but
members
also
of the
articulate
this
information that the
organization,
allies
but
from this
the
view
idea is also to
gather
show
from the
what
peoples they
is the
somehow
progress of every different uh, organization and their platforms and their proposals. And COICA, which is bringing the summary of all these peoples and different organizations,
We want to have a
is
solid
looking
platform, not just to
for
view
the
the ancestor
creation of
territories
a
of
very
indigenous
solid
peoples in the
platform
basin, but
which
also
represents
to
well
see
all these
beyond
peoples from
and
the
go
Amazon basin, but also
pay
to
attention to the
show
warnings that
what
are
are the
generated within the territories because of
early
multiple
warning
variables.
systems because of the logging, the invasions, and devastation in relation to the persecution of the people who defend their territories. So, in this mechanism of coordination together with Amazon 2.0, our contribution altogether from some member countries from COICA, we have gathered, collected some information which for us as an indigenous organization is of a very important, let's say, well, it's very important, sorry. So for us, the implementation of these systems and this progress in the COICA's platform, we can see that unfortunately we do not generate resources. We always have to look for our allies, our collaborators. So you can please continue collaborating to implement the systems and this, the specialists are experts in different areas and different areas of the basin. We believe that it's important to build as a puzzle this all these pieces that in term we hope will be implemented so we all can see all these processes. So I would like to share here the screen so you can see in some way how we are vinculating or the systems of information and the warnings in Peru. Our platform in Peru is well advanced and it visualizes the, the indigenous people's demands, and in real time they communicate what the native communities are communicating. So we want to integrate all this information in the platform of Amazon 2.0 so we can integrate and visualize and do some diagnosis in the virtual platform. So what you see here is the platform SAT-RR COICA, is the early warning system and responses of COICA. It is already designed. It is loaded in a COICA server, and we still need to do some other arrangements so we can see it in the website. But we are in the process of construction of it, and in the next months, we will be building the database because in the beginning we thought that it was important to visualize the incidences of every country. But in the future, with Elcio, we were talking about this idea, and we wanted that every country can have their own platform so COICA can gather and collect all this information of the different platforms of every country. So COICA will show what are the early warnings and from every country, but COICA as an institution organization is organizing at an international level. So you will also be able to see it here in our website. And the access here is restricted, obviously, which is for the use of COICA, merely for them. So the administration of the information answers responses to the early warnings will be done, how they will be happening, and the audience will be able to see this in the audience access. So I'm going to show you here what I will, once I access to it, I will see the territory of the COICA, the 9 countries from COICA, and I want to click one of the flags here, and I will see the country which I would like to visit. Here are the member countries which represent the COICA. In Bolivia is the CIDOB, as an example, in Brazil is COIAD. And if I click in each one of these ones, automatically you will access to the virtual platform that they are developing. So I can get the information of each region or each country. So I go directly to their website and I can access more information related to the early warning or to do an evaluation and assessment of what is being done. So here we have some member countries, there are some vinculations, we have the monitoring topic in general. You will have like a statistical tables, you will have some reports, graphical reports, you will have the search in relation to the characteristics of the reports that are being done. And so we are in the process of implementation in this great platform that COICA will be launching in the next countries. We hope it will be as soon as possible. In parallel, we are coordinating
información que ellos visibilicen también se pueda visualizar aquí. Es una plataforma de softwares abiertos, así es que nos permite vincular la información que otras plataformas nos puedan permitir vincularla, ¿no? Existe obviamente aquí el control de capas, donde yo puedo verificar las capas por cada país, ¿no? De lo que se viene haciendo. Vuelvo a repetir, va a haber una capa, un control de capas netamente de la COICA, donde yo voy a poder visibilizar los territorios, las áreas naturales protegidas. Ya lo hemos estado subiendo aquí a manera de...
Yes, we've been doing this just as an example to see the linkages. So all of this information will be loaded to analyze whatever happens. For example, there's an overlap between deforestation, something that Amazon 2.0 has been working on. And then I'm going to be able to see, everyone can see where in the Amazon it is, and we can write that comparison. As it's been explained in other presentations, what Amazon 2.0, I mean, has been doing. So if we'd like to see a specific area in the Amazon, we want to see the deforestation, all this information can be collected there, can be analyzed in the platform. So all of these variables for follow-up on the facts or the deeds, whatever happens within indigenous communities will be found in this platform. Now, of course, it is a platform by the indigenous peoples. It's not something that came from the organizations, but rather it came from the idea of, I don't know, linking to technology and then relying on technological tools. Of course, the platform is not only a platform that shows, visualizes, but it's let's say training stage It also means implementing systems to monitor with technological tools, state-of-the-art tools, how to use drones, um, mapping, cartography, also using different technologies and especially cutting edge technology. The most important thing is though the training to train to strengthen the our brothers who are settled in these indigenous communities so that they may learn how to use those tools. That is the concept to look at technology so that we may implement this big great system. So the countries are there little by little will be implementing the platforms in each country. These coordinations are taking place already with COICA. So, for example, here, what I'm showing you, we have already uploaded some warning systems in Peru, deforestation warning signs, some threats, for example, because of environmental pollution, how it moves on. Of course, we can see a dot whenever I click, you can see the features, the characteristics of deforestation. It was or the pollution. I mean, if it was mercury spill, oil spill, or some other kind of variable, it will all be a way of follow up. Now, all this information, again, that is linked through the platform. What we've done is to link the Peruvian platform to Koika. We are in the process of building this feature. This is just the let's say the box that we have moved on and it's in the process. It's being built. This link is being built with Koika, and we are implementing all the mechanism of the different color palettes so that it looks according to the structure, the Koika structure, so that they may analyze it. All this information, again, that I'm showing about the early warnings created in Peru. Some of them have been tried outside Peru to see if the system itself will be working throughout the Amazon basin. And of course, it has yielded good results. All of this information is linked to this platform, for example. This platform is something that we have worked with in Peru already for 3 years. It's a platform from and by indigenous peoples that have grouped in Agrecer. It's the only platform that has been working structurally. I mean, as an organization, by and for the indigenous communities, it has three components, this platform. First of all, the territorial demands as people in Peru, then an early warning system where we have different variables integrated, and then territory governance, where we go a step beyond and we look into how the platform can show the life plans, how the platform can also show a native community with all their nuances, internal characteristics, and so on. For example, demographics, social characteristics, cultural features, and everything a native community has here eh, is where you find it in governance. So we notice whether the community has received property titles, if they're recognized or not, and so on. And also, we look beyond their territories. Now, in the first component, the cadastre of territorial demands, we can see it in real time in COICA's website, as I said, or COICA's platform. For example, let's say you'd like to see how many binational corridors to protect the communities or the forests are there. I can go to Peru and see what the areas are, the plots are, where we're working, and we can see it in Koika's platform. But if we're gonna, if you would like to see in greater detail, then I go to the platform in Peru. Of course, the internet is a little bit slow, but there, it's loaded. The first thing you can see is the territories of the native communities. It's not the indigenous peoples in Peru. Well, there is issue or the topic of judicial security. The native or tribal communities, they are titled whenever they find a territory, they give them the property titles, the land titles. So what we've done is somehow try to legalize this in the in the framework, in the corresponding framework. to recover them. All the Amazon, these are ancestor territories, but we always respect the legal component. According to the law, it says that the property titles should be granted as native communities. So here we'll link all the information, the official information held by the state. These are native communities with titles, with property titles, and then they report that in coordination with the regions. So we pull that information automatically, but then we also have our own information. Our own information here, you can analyze the native communities that are unrecognized, are still to be recognized. San Martin, they say, look, we need to recognize these native communities. Also, the native communities that have received titles with IDESEP support. When IDESEP was founded, they want to provide funds to tell the state, look, recognize these communities. If you can see, most of the native communities have been done or achieved thanks to the indigenous support. I mean, the support from the indigenous community to from the indigenous organizations, but to the community. It's not because of the state initiative. Now here, those are requesting titles. So again, like I said, we visualize the territory demands of indigenous peoples in Peru. Here, for example, we have all the native communities that to this date, well, there are many of them that have not received their property titles yet. And if we overlap this, I guess, speaking of Koika, we'll see that in the future. If we overlap the information on deforestation, we're going to see that all of the area where there are settlements, where the native communities are settled, deforestation is minimum. Deforestation is actually wherever there isn't territory security. That's why I said at first the issue of territory security of the for the indigenous peoples is the beginning, the foundation to preserve the Amazon forests. And we can see the territories per community. So we look at the concept of territorial. Tell me how much time I have left. I think I have used up my time. I could. You have 1 minute left, and then we need to move on. Okay. Again, what we can see is the territorial demands of indigenous peoples. We have this big system for early warnings where we warn in real time about degradation and deforestation, forest fires, the COVID. I think that has somehow been useful in our country. It has helped the state and what we are doing to defend the defenders. It's component based. It's structured like this. This is how it will work in a structural manner with Koika's platform from Koika with the member countries. And we have tried to include the warnings about the COVID progress amongst indigenous peoples in Peru. And that's something we've been working on to provide these warnings. We can see how COVID has progressed. This has been very helpful so that authorities gain awareness and react. The allied institutions, Braulio and EcoRed, they played a very important role in the Atalaya area. They created the command. So that information to create warnings and to visualize them, to be able to see them, it's really important for the holistic view of indigenous peoples. And now, territory governance of indigenous peoples, we are formed by 9 regional organizations and the international one that is COICA. The way how this platform integrates the organizations and indigenous peoples in Peru is like this territory governance, where each one has their own structure. For example, Orpio has 36 federations, and these 36 federations, of course, they group indigenous communities. Each federation has access, and here's where we can see the territory governance, as I said before, to manage the information and to see their native communities. So all this experience of the platform will be visualized here, can be seen here. Koika will have that, will have a way to show their partners, their allies, how they can show what's been happening in the indigenous territories of the Amazon basin, especially speaking of degradation, deforestation, and of course the persecution of the indigenous leaders and the Amazon defenders. I went over my time. This platform might need a lot more time to be able to explain it, so I'm gonna pass on the floor to you. And we move on to the other presentations, and I can answer some questions. Toya, go ahead.
Ok, obrigado, Valdir. Como o Valdir estava explicando, né, essa é uma iniciativa, né, do sistema de alerta imediato, que a COICA vem trabalhando, né,
This is an initiative of early warning that COICA is working since 2017. And in this sense, COICA did developed some projects for the platform. And where we have advanced, we have made more progress is in Peru. As Valdir presented previously in the program, all this system is already working in the platform, as COICA is already working and just putting it as a tool to be accessed. So, well, we can be implementing the early warning system in the 9 countries of the Amazon basin, which are vinculated to COICA. There was a consultation which I carried out in relation to the early warning systems and what are the consequences for not having implemented this tool in the 9 countries. So in this consultancy taken or carried out by Aldir has been concluded recently, and our work was exactly to see in which way we could be implementing a system in the 9 countries. So we developed a country the country's material, sorry, we collected the material in the different countries. We talked, we just had some conversations with the local organizations and to see how the 9 countries can work together in one platform. So it is very important, it's necessary that all the systems work in a way that they are homogeneous on the same page. So we can develop a connectivity in the COICA's platform so we can receive the information. In this way, I believe that we, in first place, need to work from the community, from the communities. The territory is the base, is the key point to start. From there, so we can do the training, which are the environmental and fiscalization monitoring team, so they can learn about the indigenous laws in the whole country. So every country can learn about the environmental laws so they can contribute in a better way, strengthening this initiative. Our main focus is the territory. And from there, everything will be articulated from the collection of the information. Then we will organize that information. Then we will pass it to the local organization. And let's say we will pass it to the sub-regional organizations. So that is the path. And Valdir, I think, did not mention yet that we need like a juridical technical support, because the monitoring system will not only do the monitoring about what's happening, what's going on the territory, but from that collection of the data, this information, is important that the local organization or the regional organization can have the access of a technical table, let's say in terms of geoprocessing or anthropology, or in terms of the laws. We can in that way create a piece from the community that can be sent to the different governmental organisms, entities. So we can send that information to the institutions to a national level and to strengthen the initiatives, the actions which have been taken by the regional organization. So we can strengthen it and support it with documentation. So we can send these documents, let's say, for example, the resolutions from the beginning of our work. And in this perspective, I believe that there are 4 topics which are important. One is the territory. The second one is the infrastructure. The third one is the deforestation, which I believe it is very important to work on. And the fourth one is health, so that we can work the whole information. And in that way, we can also contribute to the actions of the communities. And also, I believe it is important that we can develop a very strong system, but if the community cannot understand how the system works, and if they do not count on with professionals who can understand the system, we will keep the white elephant in our room, because we will have an amazing giant structure of monitoring, but they won't know how to use it. So it's important that the community gets to learn and know how to use it, so they can understand and feel and believe and understand that this system is theirs. So this is an instrument which is theirs. So they can do the monitoring for fiscalization, as Valdir said before, and the professionals in the communities and a middle, let's say, period of time, middle term period of time, with the coordination of the local organization and with COICA, we can bring out new proposals, new programs, which are for the benefits of the indigenous people. Another proposal is to develop the monitoring of the resources, the governmental resources for the environmental issues, infrastructure and mining issues, for example. I believe that this tool will give us the chance to do the monitoring and once we do this monitoring, we can work together with the community so the impacts can be of less impact in the territories. So it's necessary the communities can manage this, and it's important. It's good to have new technologies, but it's also necessary that the communities can count, they can have the human resources that can use these equipment and these tools. So, for example, the community goes for fishing, hunting, and they go to their territory, and they, at the same time they can do the fiscalization, because it's a way that in which the same community can take their youth to participate in the territories, because usually the people who is old are the older ones are the people who know the territories. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm sorry for interrupting, but we need to move on with the agenda. Thank you for your kind words, both of you. Thank you for the presentation, but this system is just update now. We are going to give the floor to the other partners of Amazon 2.0. They'll be sharing their experience from each of the countries on monitoring by the communities. We'll start with Javier Vargas. He's the national coordinator of Amazon 2.0 for Ecociencia Foundation. He'll be sharing the Ecuadorian experience. Go ahead, Javier. Please be reminded that you can write your questions in the chat box. And remember, you can only take 10 minutes. Good afternoon to everyone. I just want to confirm that you can see my screen. I'm trying to share my slides with you. Yes, we can see them. Go ahead. Well, thank you very much. Again, thank you for the invitation to this event. I'm going to share the experience of the Waurani people monitoring experience and the strategy we implemented to record and report threats. This initiative was only in Ecuador. It's in a given territory. It's near the a national natural park. I can tell you in very general terms that Wairani people, they are a nationality who occupy a long territory, big territory, about 950,000 hectares, and very big territory, covers three provinces of the Equatorian Amazon. So the Wairani people is a very actually recent contact. It was only in the 1956 when they began the process to contact the outside world, especially through from regional groups. They contacted them and they began to form communities. After that, the Guarani people began to lose their features, right, of being nomads, and they began to live in communities. So I wanted to highlight that. Basically, Guarani people is a very big territory, very well preserved territory also, and with very recent contact. And that's where we are working. Again, it's in the reservation of Yasuni Biosphere Reserve, there in yellow. That's the Waorani people's territory. And the area in green is the Yasuni Natural Park. Right here in this section of the Waorani people, that's where we worked. It was these 10 communities. They are along two main rivers in the riverbanks of these territories. Now, why we went to these territories? Because their territory of Waorani people has a lot of external threats, usually promoted by extracting industries at a big scale, and they create big impacts. For example, the oil activity, the wood activity or timber activity, and more recently, the mining activity. As you can see on the left-hand side map, these red dots is the deforestation. A lot of that, it's very much outside the Guarani people's territory, but we can see that more and more there's an increase of deforestation, especially within their territory of the Wairani people and their nationality. One of the reasons we implemented this uh, monitoring project is to avoid these things to happen and make sure this does not happen frequently. On the right hand side map, you can see the territory of the Rani people and in an overlap of a big, let's say, plots of established by the government for oil extraction. So these external threats plus the internal threats that we classify them as follows. For example, weak governance, the organization issues, social issues, loss of identity, and lack of economic opportunities and jobs, uh, their own environmental issues and others. This makes the situation even more complex, especially the environmental concerns. Those have been the factors that have triggered this idea to have the Wairani monitoring project. Our idea is to improve the territorial governance and lessen the threats and provide technical assistance to the leaders in the territory and to ensure the territory, especially help them manage their forests. And also, we want to impact through their experience. uh, we want to impact other external or institutional stakeholders that have to do with monitoring actions. So the Warani monitoring program is one single project. It works or it operates in the 10 communities that I showed before, where each one has a community monitor, a community technician who's been trained by the project Amazon 2.0, and it has three technicians that work in the monitoring office that is in the house of the organization. NAWIC is the organization that represents the Naurani people, the Waorani people. So they hold an office and they have an articulated network, some groups, the groups, their families, and so on, but also the organizations that represent them. So there are 13 members are part of this program, Waorani monitoring program. Then these other three play an articulation role, and they're closer to the organizations that represent them. To deploy the strategy to monitor that was carried out, we started by analyzing the environmental concerns. On the right hand side we see four images where we can clearly tell these are satellite images, the intervention on the forest, because it's near the infrastructure of each community where there is more deforestation. These are communities that have infrastructure such as roads, airports, or they're close to population settlements or markets. Whereas in the other images, as you can see here, the upper two, this is deforestation where there's little infrastructure, little access to roads, and little access to community centers. This difference makes the forest intervention to be different. In sites where there's great infrastructure, there's greater deforestation, great environmental pressure. So that's why we wanted to put the monitoring team together, and we wanted to map, participatory map to identify each one of the issues, the environmental threats, and how they are distributed throughout their territory. Then we conducted analysis of the reasons or the causes, and then and then we came up with these maps.
Y se ha hecho un análisis de hacia dónde van esas
Each one
presiones.
represents a type of threat, and we try to map where they're heading. It's sort of a projection to know where we need to focus future efforts to face those threats. And then in the end, we show a map where the redder colors are the places where there's an overlap of the greatest thresholds, and then the green colors means less frequency. As a result, the project and the Warani monitoring program focused morely or greatly on monitoring those sites, those locations where there is a greater overlap of threats and pressure, so that we may optimize the work of the monitors, the community monitors in the territory, or monitors or forest rangers. This is pretty much the scheme how the Rani Forest Ranger program works. On the left hand side, you can see the boxes in orange. that describes the actions developed by the forest rangers or monitors. The On the right hand, you can see the work of the technical monitors, what happens outside the communities, which corresponds to the process for auto managed data, the records received by the technicians, and they were sent by the community monitors. So we start with search for some event or environmental violation. The monitor picks it up in his phone with DataKit. It's an application in Android. They can fill out a digital form and they can use it in articulation with or an interface with a platform that is called NARC, so that those reports with internet, once they have internet, they can be sent to a server. So where so the data is processed there and the decisions are made. So once the monitor or the forest ranger records data, he sends it. I mean, if the violator is a member of the Warani people, it is passed on to the head of the community, and during the community assembly, they make decisions as to how to deal with it. Whereas when the violator is not from the Warani people, it goes through the app, and and after there is internet connection, it goes to a server, and then from the server, the technical viewer or forest ranger sends it to the president of the Orani people so that the president of the Orani nationality may take actions. They can make a decision and take action based on the information. They can report it before a ministry or the police or the attorney, prosecuting attorney, and so on. So whenever the violator is not identified, the records are kept in the on a platform, a server where we keep all the every monitoring reports or the everything that communities report, those that have been directly reported to the director of the nationality as well as those that we have received from other sources. So that's basically how we implemented it. Like I said before, we have tried to adapt the technological tools that we had at hand and the capabilities of the members of the Orani people, how they've learned to use Android phones and they've installed the Odegac app. They or we have produced the forms for each kind of threat that we have spotted together with the Warman people. They're very user friendly, very simple. So they've began to use them and they've done it pretty well so far. Now the reports are hosted in a server. It's a platform called Onan. Now, the platform basically what it does is that it receives the reports sent from the phones, from the app using internet,
Están detallados cada uno de ellos, como vemos aquí.
and the monitoring office receives them each one with the name, whoever reported, the community leader,
Y estos reportes son los que se imprimen para que el presidente de la
the
nación
date when it took place, and we print that so the president or the director of the Guarani people receives it and make a decision. There's a picture, information, the signature, whoever picked up the information.
lo recibe y firma también el presidente de la nacionalidad cuando es el caso o
They
corresponde.
receive it and they sign it also. Whoever receives it will sign.
Se imprime estos informes y se
And the reports are printed and they be used as evidence or proof for the later reports or to use it to make a decision with the indigenous authority. The process has been constant. We have built capacities for all the Wamani people all the time. The diagnosis, the design, implementation, all the stages, and up to now, the the processes to build capacities. We can see some pictures. There was a very important training event we held with the Google members. They gave training to the Barmani peoples to teach them how to use the app. Again, open data kit. So that was very useful. We see the work of the monitors in the field. I just want to highlight some achievements. And we have trained the members of the Guarani people, not only the monitors, but the leaders. We have held over 47 workshops with participation over 600 people, both men and women. The monitors have built enough capacity to provide technical support to other members of the Waorani people to update the statutes where we incorporate this role of the Waorani monitor and the community monitoring system. So internally, it became institutionalized thanks to the update of the statutes.
Desde nuevamente, desde este rol que han asumido
We
los...
have supported all the role by the community leaders and the roles. And we have transferred that experience to monitor to all members of our nationalities, such as the Shuara Root peoples in Ecuador, the other nationality in Ecuador. There have been exchanges, but also thanks to this experience with the project Amazon 2.0, we have built the monitoring strategy of other communities. The experience has been used to impact the Ministry of Environment to build a national monitoring strategy. And it has relied on this experience of the Wairani people. So this has been a very important contribution. The Wairani monitoring program has been invited by the National Assembly. That means the government of Ecuador to participate in a monitoring program in a Yasuni Natural Park to implement the, I don't know, exploitation blocks, the oil blocks, the plots, and so help them make sure that they are doing it properly, especially environmental plans. So
Bueno, nosotros desde Conciencia no solo trabajamos en las
some
acciones de
lessons learned. We not only work on monitoring, but it's just a complement to other actions that we carry out as ecosciences in Ecuador. These are productive activities, for example, to strengthen the livelihoods of the community. So monitoring is a way to articulate it. What is articulated with other programs and projects and other activities such as strengthening governance, sustainable production activities, and have other initiatives. So these are actions that support monitoring because many of the environmental concerns are also caused by the, you know, the need, the economic need. We still need to articulate at other levels with other indigenous peoples. That's something that we have also learned. All the levels must be articulated. In the case of the Waorani people, the president of the nationality, also in the province, they have other leaders and groups of young people, women's association, and we should articulate at all levels so that the monitor project can operate properly and can rely on the participation of the leaders. That's part of the strengthening of their governance, professionalization, and the monitors being there. That's been really important. We have not have non-indigenous technicians who are there in the territory, but we have developed the capabilities amongst the indigenous members. So the Wairani people, they'll be raising the information, they'll be monitoring, they'll be working. So that builds trust among the community, with the community. We need to develop other protocols for protection of the monitors because they report, as we all know, the work to report also means risk, a personal risk. So we need to think how we implement safety protocols for them. Also, empowerment of women has been fundamental, instrumental, especially the Association of Wairani Women has facilitated the fact that we articulate all kinds of people. We must highlight the participation of the elder. They are the wise men, the wise people in the territory, the fact that they acknowledge the process that provides a lot of support to our monitoring activities in the territory. Also, to build communication strategies at levels that should be all the time. It's important to bear in mind that the monitoring programs go beyond the projects, or the programs go beyond the projects. Amazon 2.0 ends, but we are concerned that it may be sustained. The activities will continue, so we always need to take into account or think about or schedule how these initiatives will be sustained throughout time after the project is implemented. Uh,
Última recomendación, tal vez es necesario que
One
todos
more point is that we need to make sure that all these monitoring processes be delivered or recognized by their nationalities so that they take ownership. Something we've learned a lot is that from the very beginning, the technicians, they were identified not with the organization but with the conciencia. And if we don't correct that in time, it will not allow the ownership of the system. So we need to empower the communities so that they implement their monitoring system and they feel identified with it. We give them the tools, but it's the organizations, the ones that manage all the monitoring platform. Otherwise, there will not be, they won't take ownership. That's all I wanted to share. Thank you. I'm sorry it took longer than expected. Thank you, Javier, for your presentation. No, Rebecca, she's the coordinator of Amazon 2.0 for EcoRed. She's going to share the Peruvian experience. Go ahead, Rebecca. Again, we remind you that it's only 10 minutes for the presentation. I know it takes longer to talk about this, but just to give the opportunity to other colleagues to respect their time. So, Rebecca, go ahead. Good afternoon to everyone. I want to take the opportunity to greet you, especially a group of monitors and forest rangers who are participating in this workshop from Atalaya. I'm going to switch off my camera to improve my connectivity. I'm going to tell you the Peruvian experience. We're going to talk about the intervention scenario, the community monitoring program. They are in charge of monitoring and how it was managed, the success factors, the difficulties and challenges throughout the process. It's been a learning process while we've implemented this. We have implemented this monitoring program. Here's where we are located, Ucayali in the Atalaya province. And we work with 12 communities, about 191,000 hectares. That's how big their territory is. Now, to tell you about the context of Atalaya, there are 3 million hectares of forest, 65% of the population are indigenous. We have 206 communities. The annual deforestation rate is 0.5. I'm sorry, 0.05. There are a lot of threats. For example, road is being built. There is drug dealing activities, some invasion of the area. And so unless something is done in this area, deforestation will increase in the coming years. Also in the area, we have protected natural area, some national natural parks, Sira, Alto, others. So we need to articulate with other public entities, other bodies, other indigenous organizations, for example, the local forest authority, the National Forest Service, other NGOs such as that, and indigenous organizations such as URPIA. So to explain what we did there to monitor, first I'd like to give you the concept. What for community forest is. It's a technical instance created by a community assembly. The idea is to lead the management of the natural resources of the community, and it has the function not just to monitor, but also to administer, control, monitor, and let's say supervise the territory. Now, the appointment of the forest ranger or monitor is done transparently. First of all, we communicate the profile required amongst the communities and we share what the functions and privileges are. Then in the community assembly, the, there are three or four candidates, and then one is appointed. First, group of three, and then only one is appointed. It's done in the General Assembly. So the monitoring program that is created as an instance appoints the rainforest or monitor. They are empowered, accredited, they give further training, and they plan the work to be done. We, the appointed forest ranger is introduced to other institutions and before the authorities. Along the process, also they update the statute so that this level has been legally created within the community, and it will not be just after the project is gone, it will disappear. So it's a technical position with the legal support within the community. So these monitoring programs have played these three roles: technical assistance, representation, and also monitoring. For monitoring, or to observe and watch and vigilate, they take into account three factors to monitor the forest coverage. It's constantly done, it's all the time, it's planned, it's their own initiative. There's also forest monitoring at the request of a given situation that is non-scheduled. And there's also support to institutions and to check warnings. They also monitor uh, the governance management. They use indicators, institutions, transparency, and community management. And finally, the use of the forest. Now, the first part, forest coverage. They try to organize the territory by identifying the areas where the forest is used, where the community is growing, cultural areas, and so on. And then they identify the potential risks. They identify what will be done or what is being done and why it is happening. Then they establish the monitoring routes. They determine the length, how often they will monitor, how long it takes, and so on. Then there is monitoring of unexpected or an unplanned circumstances. It could be uh, monitor any happen of the community that goes out hunting and he sees something and they can report to the monitor so that they go confirm and they assess the impact, maybe if possible take some pictures and so on. And there is support to institutions, for example the reports requested by the
el área de aprovechamiento, entonces ahí es acompañado por el veedor y por el
authorities, and then they go together with the community leader.
también se hace un monitoreo
We also do some monitor of the
de la gobernanza
of the program, also monitor the forest governance.
monitoreo de la gobernanza forestal.
Now here
Queremos responder a la pregunta
we want to answer the question, what makes us think that we are on the right track to improve? And then we identify
donde estamos más
the indicators where we are more fragile, the weak indicators, so to speak. So we check the political, institutional, legal frameworks, the regulation, also the planning process, the decision-making process, and how we implement and control.
se hace una reunión para poder
We hold
identificar
meetings to
los puntos
identify
débiles o
the
las
weak points,
fortalezas de estos
what the
indicadores
strengths are in the
sobre
indicators,
todo responde
also, and especially to respond to the
un
needs.
reglamento de recursos naturales.
And if there is already some regulation for natural resources, if there's a body or council in charge of forests, if there are documents with reports, with clear channels to access to communication that are made available to all the members of the community, if there is an administrative organization and the community keeps record of that, transparency, also the expenses, the goods and services provided, and then whether the community decisions are done or are made transparently and all the inhabitants are informed. So it's a set of indicators, about 50 of them, that try to respond in a summarized manner to these all of these items.
También se hace un, digamos,
We also do monitoring on the forest
se
use.
verifica si la parcela de
That means
tierra
they
está
verify
relacionada.
whether the
Quiero
plot has
decir que
been
en Propiedad
specified.
Perú,
I like
las
to
comunidades,
uh,
sobre todo
place you in context. Here in Peru, the community, especially most of them, they do some forest use. It's a way, it's one of their livelihoods. I know that in other countries they don't do that. That's why we mention it, because here we talk about forest use because they're authorized to use the forest. Now, here they have to be sure that they will not violate the law. So the plot needs to be the set needs to have the set boundaries to identify the species that they can cut down, also volume, that they also have the seed trees as a specified in the management plan, no matter how they cut the pieces, they verify the operations, the logbook, everything. What is requested by the law to comply with everything, all the procedure. One more thing about this. Many of the communities have actually violated the law and they have received fines with the force community programs. These violations have not taken place anymore because they have been trained. They know how to monitor their own activities. So, what have been the success factors? We're still implementing and we continue to create more monitors or train more monitors, and we have more committees for control and surveillance, and we have received support from leaders in the community. There's been good articulation with public bodies to monitor. And also, the technical staff should come from within the communities, and there'll be training, not just the initial training. It's key to do follow up and to empower those trained individuals. Something else that was very important is the accreditation of monitors or forest rangers, and that they, I don't know, their bylaws are updated. It must point out that there's a technical instance that is the monitoring program and it's integrated by community forest rangers or monitors, and they are, I don't know, they're legitimate. They are representatives duly appointed. One more thing that we've noticed is important is that there is a legal recognition by the forest authority, the local authority at least, or regional authority, that gives them what do you say, that empowers them and gives them the support they need to be able to react or act whenever they come across illegal activities in their zones, in their areas. And what difficulties have we found? Well, there's been little understanding and knowledge about the application of the law. That's why some of the communities received fines imposed by the supervisory body. Thanks to participation at the advice of the monitoring program, these fines have been practically resolved, and there's also invasions or other violations, and that creates conflict. The little connectivity in the zone does not facilitate, makes it doesn't make it possible to warn in real time. What they do is we receive the warning from GeoForest, then we inform the community monitors or forest rangers to go and check there on site in the field, and they pick up information and provide the response, and that takes about 2 weeks. It's not right away. It's not online or in real time. And there are little resources, I mean, financial resources for monitoring activities, in spite of the fact that they've worked with the institutions. There's little articulation amongst them, and there are other implemented systems. There are different thresholds of the state that are not necessarily interconnected. And okay, another difficulty we've noticed recently is the pandemic, of course. It has created more weaknesses, and of course, the health issue, it's being a big problem. Now, the challenges, just like in Ecuador, the financial sustainability issue remains a problem. It's a big concern because the projects leave and then the activities disappear, and there's no more support for the monitors or forest rangers. But there are other institutions that are taking the lead. SOXTA, for example, is the local forest authority. They are implementing new control committees or monitoring committees, and they are following that process there. They are empowering the community so that the communities can continue to do the monitoring. We need to ensure permanent technical assistance, rely with on more indigenous professionals. We've noticed there are very few. Okay, if there is information from others, but then there's no one to report to if they don't have a professional because they've left. So we need to make sure that they are present. So another point is to have a process after there's been a report. We need to have expand the number of monitors that are available. We need to keep a strategy to face the arrival of armed groups, the drug dealers and terrorists, and also what we will do after COVID. Those are the challenges, and hope that we can achieve better things and overcome these challenges by articulating with other institutions. That's all. Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca, for your presentation. Victor Manuel and Elena, they coordinated project Amazon 2.0 for Natura Foundation. They'll share the experience in Colombia. Go ahead.
Hola Andrea, buenas tardes a todos. Ya vamos a compartir nuestra pantalla. Estoy aquí con
Hello,
Rafael,
everyone. I'm trying to share my screen.
fue el encargado de
I'm here with Rafael. He was in charge of this
2.0
monitoring CO2 since, 8 2.0 since 2017.
les va a
Victor,
compartir su pantalla.
can you share your screen?
Muchas gracias por invitarnos a este
Thank you
espacio.
for inviting
Y
us.
pues ya le dejo el auditorio a Víctor.
Go ahead, Victor.
Hola, buenas tardes.
Yes, hello.
Ya estamos viendo la pantalla.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Muchas gracias.
Okay, thank you.
Bueno, gracias por el espacio. Nosotros
Thank you for this time.
compartir también nuestra experiencia de Amazon.
We'll share the experience of Amazon 2.0 in Colombia.
En el programa de monitoreo
We're going to focus on community monitoring
resultados importantes que
and the important results that we achieved.
pues para empezar,
To begin with,
el programa de monitoreo
the monitoring program had a general objective,
en fortalecer la gobernanza
and it was to strengthen territorial governance, participation, and the intercultural relations between a peasant community and indigenous community in a municipality.
poner en evidencia presiones y amenazas sobre
So to look at threats and pressure on the territory and influence decision making both locally in the department and in the region.
esta es nuestra área de intervención.
This is an intervention zone. It's located here in the department of Caquetá.
Este es pues nuestro país.
This is our country, Colombia. The intervention is in the northwest of Solano municipality. It's this section in yellow. It's one of the biggest municipalities in the country, probably the second one. Speaking of area, and also they have an important amount, or yes, of natural forests in the Amazon, and there are very important parks there, natural parks, national natural parks. Chiviquete National Park is one of the biggest protected areas in our country. Our intervention area is well known,
Conformado por 9 veredas.
formed by 9 villages. We work with 8 of them.
Estas veredas pues
These villages are defined according to the number of families that come together, and they have a community organization or an action program, and they are represented. The villages, we worked with 8 of them. It was about 19,000 hectares, 135 peasant families, and with an indigenous reservation called Inga de Iñeras. It's an Ingana community. That's the nationality. They've declared reservation. It's been recognized by the state since 1989. It was a resolution passed by the state. It's an official recognition. They recognize that a territory of collective nature, collective territory. There is presence of another people, Nasa people. It's a much smaller reservation, about 3,000 hectares, but there was no articulation with them, though. We didn't work together with them. Our area of intervention total 30,000 hectares. There have been a lot of interventions. I want to show the context where we're located. This is the circle right here, the orange circle. This is the work zone for Amazon 2.0, where the deforestation flank is advancing to or moving towards the Amazon. And there are a lot of issues here together, historical issues as well, that have impacted the area. For example, extraction activities, wood, timber, skin, or other deforestation phenomena, and finally some legal economies, but especially breeding, cattle breeding. So the target population, the indigenous and the peasant communities, they share many needs, basic needs. They have not been met or satisfied. The peasants are mainly coming from other areas of the country since the 40s, actually, when the colonists came, the so-called colonists, these people that have tamed the jungle, that's what we call it. They have come and set up their productive systems in the jungle, and I know they've settled there. Also, the Niñeras community, they came to the territory probably in the 50s. The economy was based on food sovereignty, and they have the traditional productive system, so they work and live in the territory and they enjoy it. There have been some conflicts amongst the communities themselves because of the pressure on the resources, given resources such as forest resources. It's a territory that has seen a lot of innovation, also because of resources such as hunting take into account the reservation, and those are they are the ones who preserve the biggest amount of forest. So there are interventions, unauthorized interventions by some hunters who are not part of their community. So our project, this is kind of our intervention logic, how we came to the territory with each community. They had their own organizations. The peasant communities had some body. It's called the Community Action Board, and the indigenous communities had the council, the indigenous council. And there was actually an association called Pro Desarrollo, like Pro Development. They represent all the communities, and it's been there for over 20 years. The project wanted to monitor, so we wanted to articulate with other environmental promoters and contact each organization. Each village had an environmental promoter, and each council had three of them. So we had the opportunity to get their support. We wanted to impact their ways of life and learn together with the indigenous peoples and the peasants. And we wanted them to have the technical information, the technical knowledge to use also their knowledge, and to have these two cultures, actually, indigenous and the farmers. And also we want to see how the territory was controlled. We want to strengthen their processes to see how they manage their territory. With all that knowledge and experience, we could create an impact at a greater scale, maybe at the municipality or government, I don't know, department in government and so on. Now to focus on the program, monitoring program development phases or stages, we divided it into three stages. The first one is the preparation stage, where we came up with an initial diagnosis, and we were able to approach the communities, and through the promoters or agents helped us identify common interests, the indigenous community interests and the peasants. So we talked about water, forest protection, biodiversity, and respect for territories. That was the second stage. So amongst the promoters of the indigenous community and others, they were all very interested in this, and they had identified in some of their organizations, mainly in the indigenous peoples, also for water protection and to protect their resources. Now, in the first stage, we define three axes: climate, biodiversity, and the community or territory organization to look at the threats and pressures that were taking place in their territory. In phase two, what we did was to define the methodologies together and come up with a training process to collect data, especially in the three axes that I had mentioned. So for climate, we worked on with some micro stations, very simple. They had a thermometer, uh, rain meter to check the humidity, precipitation, and so on. For biodiversity, we had observation, a learning curve that was about 1 kilometer within the forest, very close to the houses of the farmers, where they would make the observations, and a weekly log book or log page. That was the field work so that the results could be or maybe comparable amongst the monitors or foreign rangers. The two territories again, the peasants and the community, the indigenous community. We did internal follow-up and reports to identify threats, of course, and see how they were managing the environmental management issues and how they managed conflicts within the communities and within the reservations. So we made adjustments to the methodology to, of course, favor the monitors. In stage three, we began to collect the data and take the all the variables into account. We consolidated some databases and we conducted a information analysis together with the community, with the monitors, both peasant and indigenous monitors. There were a lot of research questions during the analysis, and some of them are still pending an answer. And very important that the monitors began to share the results with their communities, and we consolidated the management tools. So those are the main results of the monitoring program. We have recognition of the territory, something we did not have before. The different two views, the indigenous groups and or the indigenous members and the peasant and all the databases. I'm going to show something else here. Let me show you this information. So this recognition of the limits or the boundaries between the peasant community and the indigenous community. Again, peasants and indigenous communities all the time. We have kept that. Community monitoring on biodiversity allowed us to identify great richnesses, different species and birds, about 60, 28 mammals, and some with a level of threat. For example, this one. This is the biological name or the no scientific name. I'm sorry. And we were able to identify other species, forest species. There are about 23 of them. They're being used by the monitors to restore for other processes and all the climate records that we were able to pick up based on the information collected by the forest rangers. Now, the analysis of coverage change, there were very interesting results together with the monitors. This is forest coverage change. This was in articulation with IDEAM. On the left-hand side, you can see the monitoring process hand in hand with the technical definitions established by EDM, and then on the right-hand side, the forest non-forest map by EDM. So we can see that we identified some areas that EDM did not felt or did not think they were a forest, but based on their definitions, it could be a forest. And other deforestation processes that the national monitoring system did not visualize, did not spot, but it's happening. And it could be defined micro deforestation. And in the long run, if you add them throughout years, it's a big area being deforested and those important ecosystems. And if you multiply them with all the deforestation ring there is in the north of the Amazon in Colombia, well, it's interesting to see what is happening and how we can understand these processes. Many of them are associated to expanding the agricultural frontier. And in other cases in the territory, they're associated to the appearance of illegal crops in these lands. Part of the monitoring and the coverage, the forest coverage change, we identified the where the rivers start or some creeks. The communities benefit from that, and we were able to achieve intercultural agreements to preserve those water bodies, and they're all located here in their territory. So we also planted 6,700 trees, native species, the ones we had identified. And here we can see the big takeaway of the project of the intervention is 14 environmental monitors to train. They were training how to use the tools to monitor the lands. They can take pictures. They can produce reports. They are very important sources of information. How we articulated all these results with local impact. Basically, we try to translate the results into consolidated folders for each community, and we try to post them into environmental plans for indigenous community. The reservation management plan is something that was already there. It was an instrument that is still sitting in the territory.
Unos lineamientos para un plan de manejo intercultural, es decir, ampliar esa
We
visión.
try to expand that view of the territory, not just the reservation, not just to be there in the villages, but to have greater articulation. This process is still beginning. It requires support from the local, for example, the environmental authority, and in that case, is a population that is called, or an institution, Corporacionía, or the institutions that can help us. As a local challenge after our intervention, we want to keep the monitoring program and strengthen the local monitors or forest rangers, give them the resources. And we know it's a new process to them. They are trained, they were trained, but they need to become more familiar. Natura Foundation is trying to look or find a way to continue to support the process so that it continues and we can implement the agreements for conservation. We need to keep the ecological connectivity in the water bodies there in the region. Consolidated management plan in the territory is a proposal to a longer extent, in a longer term. It's interesting, and also we need a lot that you, the other countries, such as Ecuador and Peru, will have defined the institutional resort, the recognition of those forest rangers. We haven't achieved that.
Muy
As
local,
soon as there is recognition
desde el
and also a recognition from IDEAM. IDEAM is the institution that is in charge of monitoring carbon at the national level, but they don't have this decision making power in the territory and those initiatives. Well, so here we have some products that are available at the website, the project. So this is consolidated with the experience. These are some guidelines, very interesting for birds, mammals, where we work, and more documents that we have at the local level, at participation, governance, and monitoring results. We see them here as well. This is all. Thank you so much. I'm sorry a little bit about the time. No, don't worry, Victor. Also, Elena, she was there, part of this presentation as well. So now we are gonna go with Ms. Alarcon. She's the coordinator of the Amazon 2.0, and she's gonna tell us her experience in Brazil. And we want to remind Carol and everyone else that the presentation is 10 minutes. You have the floor.
Thank you, Andrea. I will present in Portuguese so we can change a little bit my native language. I can use it. And I want to thank the consortium colleagues and the people from COIAB. I will present briefly so we can see the presentation in a nice way. Okay, I will tell you a little bit the summary of the results of our workshop that took place here in Brazil. My agenda is very similar to the other ones, and I have some experiences here too, and the assessment procedures as well. I will try to speak slowly so the interpreters can do a good translation. So, okay, the scenario of this workshop took place in Acre, and more or less like the 60% of the Amazon basin in Brazil is there, but also the deforestation is very high in the Brazilian territory. In the Amazon 2.0 project is located in the territory of Acre, and it is located in the park, Chandler's State Park. It is a giant area, represents the 6% of the territory of Acre, but deforestation accumulated happens in an isolated area where the conservation and deforestation is still, the index is still good. So we have like the indigenous people working there, and the people who work in the same park, State Park Chandler's. They are working together in the borders with Peru. And here again is the location where we are working. Even though we have this pressure of threats in this region of borders, there are some pressures and threats in these territories. For example, in terms of threats, there is the construction of a road, especially in the Peruvian area where there is the pressure and the flow in that region. And there are also threats that exist already in those territories. For example, there's illegal hunting, traffic through the rivers, and those are threats to the communities. The main actors we work with in the communities are those ones here in the screen, with which we have technical cooperation agreements. It's important to say that Brazil, among other countries, in Brazil, the IUCN in Acre was not present in development projects. So we catalyzed and we strengthened some initiatives very important that had been developing. And for example, the Monitora program and monitoring of the territory. And as an initiative of the union government, the federal government, and with Acre, the CEMAC, the Secretariat of the Environment, and the initiative of the CP Acre of indigenous people, and together with the Association of Agents of Acre, we have two references of action. During the project, we have been strengthening and working, catalyzing those projects. It's different in other countries because in our areas are public territories and lands. So for example, the Park Chambers is a unity of protection, and we have to work together with the Environment Secretariat and to create a technical cooperation with FUNAE, which did not happen because there was a context related to the politics in Brazil. But we just had created a collaboration with the agroforestry indigenous agents. And I will tell you a little bit about those actors. We have agreements of collaboration and technical with ACERA and the cooperation of ACRE. I will tell you a little bit of those two experiences specifically. It's important to separate them because in the Chandler's Park, we got to implement capacity education. The honor is like training activities. And recently we did their training and we are doing the monitoring and development, which is in development now. It is happening already. In Amazon 2.0, in Rio Purus and Mamoadate indigenous lands, there is a collaboration with the CTI and Luis Enrique Borges, who is the coordinator of the actions of the monitoring program from Chandler's Park, is present in the CPI. And there was something which happened and he was not, he could not participate. He was not able to do that. But the system of early warning and the commission of ACRE and CPI is important to strengthen that dialogue with CPI. It's important, it's interesting as well. And briefly, I will talk about the organization of our actions in Chandler's Park. We have 10 monitors who are monitoring for 3 initiatives. The program Monitora, which is the government plan through SEMA. And recently we established the collaboration from Monitora and the project YAPA and Amazon 2.0 project from IUCN for the protected areas of the Amazon biome. And this is important because this monitoring had been working on 3 axes and working on the, for example, with the butterflies and other birds and other plants. And we, with YAPA, we work together with initiative to research in relation to the fishes, the bagres, which is for the monitoring of fishes, and an agreement of fishing in the park. It is very special, this park, because there are communities living around it and there is production that is happening, and there are some limitations for the uses of the resources because it is a park. And the initiative of Amazon 2.0 and the monitors from YAPA strengthens the presence of that community, and the establishment of that agreement together with the Secretariat and the state is in a way that the communities can stay there and they have a good living, and they are facing pressures and threats. So the initial diagnosis identified the logging and illegal hunting in that territory specifically, and also the illegal fishing in the rivers and in the lakes. This monitoring, it happened in 3 points, and it was done together with the communities and through the coordination of the consultancy with Luis who I talked about before. And the idea was to identify where those 3 points for monitoring was going to happen. We coordinated the materials of frequencies, data, protocols, and the data was gathered using some tools where the data from IAPA is, and they pass through a diagnosis analysis, and it is presented to the communities. So this protocol processes the information through smartphones, GPS, and applications, which is done by assistant analysis, and they systematize, they do the analysis of this data, and we are in that process together with the monitors. And last month, they were trained together with the 3 initiatives, Monitora, APA, and Amazon 2.0, and we want to collect data from Amazon 2.0 in GeoVisor, which is something which makes me very happy. In terms of the program monitors, is a federal program implemented by SEMA, the Secretary SEMA Act, and they are committed to continue monitoring the pressures and threats in their routine of the program, this national program of monitoring of the biodiversity. And it is important to activate it. The monitors are already trained, and they have the necessary tools so they can do the follow-up in relation to the monitoring. This is a brief experience of the Tundras Park and the indigenous lands. We work in relation with the key initiative of the selection of some monitors in some of the indigenous territories, but because of the pandemics, we had the process of monitoring, and the training was kind of limited. Now we received like communication from FUNAI that they request to do this training in territories where there can happen priority actions of priority. So we do not have a complete access, and we cannot continue with those activities of monitoring, but I think we did it in a creative way, especially through the agroforestry agents, indigenous agents program, which has like a center of the monitoring, the pressures and threatening center, which is called for the supervision of the territory, and it's being implemented by Senate in Acre. So there is a participatory planning, and then comes the data regularization together with the work guides. We have done also supervisions, audits, and we have a smartphone use. And before Amazon 2.0, we send the information through reports. CTI creates analytic reports, they create maps, and they do political incidents and decision-making actions. These are part of the actions of environmental administration, and they work together with the plans of administration of the territories, indigenous territories, and this process of monitoring is being integrated. This initiative of CPI and the beginning of the training of the agroforestry indigenous agents in 2016, and it was recognized by the council from the state's council of Acre. So this profession was recognized from 2017, and they started to. Please present us the last minute of your presentation. Sorry, thank you. Okay, so there are more than 139 agents that were trained in Acre in the territories. And now I will pass the last slides. We had some limitations because of the pandemics. For example, the lack of formalization of ACT and the cooperation with FNAI and the absence of physical infrastructure is some key factors that we could go through successfully. We had a very important result, was the plan of monitoring for the indigenous land Mamo data, and that the information, the data that existed since years ago, we supported the CTI to analyze and organize that data, and we are in the process of assessment of this data and this information, and we want to present it to FNAI and the organizations. And we also did the initiative of the agroforestry indigenous agents. We want to bring these initiatives to the experience in the community monitoring in the Brazilian Amazon. COICA needs the platform to bring that information. So there is an important synergy, and we want to empower the local organizations for their visibility. The pandemics, the adaptation to the pandemics was something very important. We could collaborate, we could support the local organizations during the pandemics. We had to reprogram the activities and the way we used to do the actions and the activities. So we were not able to do it in a way that you have liked it, but we are preparing a course for the training for the community monitoring, and we want to support the COICA, and there is a good material. This is a hybrid material with texts, with videos, and the idea is to the training from remote places, and COICA will be in charge of that, and we will talk about it later, and the next steps and opportunities and challenges that I will mention briefly is to continue consolidating the experiences which are on process, and we count with different initiatives. We want to formalize those commitments and some opportunities together with some members from IUCN and others from the European Union. And the challenges in the future are to continue with the process of the local empowerment, and how it's going to be the post-COVID economies, and to promote this work inter-borders. Thank you. I will be available for your questions later.
I know there's a lot of information you want to share, but there are two more people, two more speakers, and it's already 4. So I'm going to pass on the floor to Graham Atkinson. He's coordinator of Amazon 2.0 for American People's Association, APA, who will be sharing the experience from community monitoring in Guyana. Go ahead.
Hi, I know it's excited, but I will turn it over to Michael McGarrell to make a short presentation on behalf. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone.
Boa tarde, muito obrigada.
Sorry, I know it's late already, and I know that we have spent quite a lot of time, so I'll be pretty brief in terms of my presentation. I just returned today from the field, so I'm a bit out of touch. Nonetheless, today I want to share a bit with you about our experiences. I know and I admire that, you know, others
Eu
have
gostaria
shared from their country's experiences in terms of what are the good things as well. And I think it's up to us to learn from each other. So I'll just share a little bit about our experience here in Guyana. I know, like I said, I didn't prepare a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation to bring to you today, but I'll talk briefly on some of the things that we do. And then I will basically show you a product of some of the work that we have been doing, in that we have been able to set up a database, a geographic database online that people can access to find information. What we have tried to do with it is to make it as simple as possible that, you know, any average person can use the database to understand what is happening around Guyana. So we have been working throughout Guyana. There are 10 regions in Guyana, and we have focused most of our monitoring work in regions 7, 8, and 9. And the reason for this is because these are the 3 regions where we have more indigenous peoples present in terms of living, their villages. But not just that, these are the regions as well which have a lot of threats as it relates to mining, forestry, and infrastructure development in terms of like roads and things like that. We work through district councils. We partner with district councils, and the district councils are leaders from the communities in the particular district. They make up what they call a district council. So for example, at the moment, we are working under the Amazon 2.0 project in the North Pacraimas. This is just one of the areas where we're working, but this has been supported by the Amazon 2.0 project, where we are focusing on seven communities. Why the 7 communities? We had to prioritize in terms of who was most affected by mining, who was most affected by forestry, as well as infrastructure development, the main areas, the intervention areas that we do. So what we're doing and how it works is that we have local persons from the communities themselves. We have trained them in terms of using basic tools like GPS-enabled smartphones, GPS devices, even drones, that they can gather the data, that they can be able to, one, identify the threat, identify the location of the threat, but also gather the evidence in terms of taking photos, maybe taking videos, so that we can use that for advocacy purposes. So what we are leaning on is the knowledge of the local persons, because they know their lands better than anyone who may come from outside, right? They understand the terrain, they understand where things happen, and they're able to capture that. So we just have to train them in using the tools so that we can collect the information in a format that we can use to generate maps and things like that. I think one of the challenges that we have faced over the years in terms of monitoring is the geography, you know, and it's very expensive to get from one place to the next. And even most recently, with the rains, and we're still having rains at the moment, the trails are bad. You know, we travel sometimes from village to village on ATV motorcycles, and because of the trails, the condition of the trails, it's very difficult. Until last night, unfortunately, well, fortunately, last night I turned over, and well, I'm here to talk the story, so it means I'm fine, I'm okay. But the road is so bad that, you know, the risk involved as well, and to get into places has been challenging. And of course, the operators would charge more for things. So transportation is very expensive in terms of moving from place to place. We know that there has been a change in the way the climate affects our communities. It should have been the dry season here in Guyana at this point in time, but like I said, we're still having a lot of rains. The trails are bad. It's difficult to move from place to place, which means it makes it a lot more difficult for us to collect certain type of data because we can't access certain areas where there may be threats because the trails may be flooded. The specific area might be too far away, so it's very difficult to get to those places. So these are some of the challenges that we've been doing. What, like I said, we have been collecting data, and over the years since the APA would have started working, we have been collecting quite a lot of different type of data, which for us, of course, will ultimately be the basis of our arguments when we go to advocate for our rights. I'm sharing with you a product of one of the, not one of the, but the product of the work that we've been doing over the years in terms of collecting data. And I have seen the presentations made. I've seen also that there are databases which are available, and in time, yes, I suspect that something like this as well will go on to COICA's website or COICA's database because it's something which contains quite a lot of information. So basically what we have done is that we have presented maps in a simple form, in a simple place that people can understand. So for example, on the tab you have overview. The overview shows the bigger picture in terms of what exactly is happening in Guyana. We can look at the current state, and similar to what I've seen earlier, we have been able to put layers where you can turn layers on and off. And I think this is something that people want to be able to do. I should not, because I'm not familiar with GIS, I'm not familiar with using the softwares to edit and do stuff. I should just be able to turn off and turn on something on the map. And I think this is what people wants to see. So for example, I just turn on the layer for the mining, medium scale mining concessions across Guyana. And clearly from this map alone, I mean, you can zoom up and you can get more information, but clearly from this, you can see that it's quite a lot, right? A lot of Guyana is given out as medium scale mining concessions. And these are things that, some people don't know. I mean, you can find more information, for example, on a specific block by just clicking on it. So it tells you more in terms of what that particular mining block is, when it was given, and things like that. So these are things that we want to be available readily to the public, local Guyanese, but also international partners as well, so they can see what exactly is happening in Guyana, right? So it's something, and we can check it out for
Michael, just perhaps a reminder, you have 2 more minutes. Just a reminder.
2 more minutes. I thought it was 4. I think I started at 2 past anyway. Sorry, you distracted me. I wish that others could have spent their time as well, because some person spoke for like 20 minutes and things. So nevertheless, for example, we have threats, and you can see the red areas. We have put it in so easy formats that people can think. We want to look at conservation opportunities. Where are the opportunities for conservation in Guyana? And for example, here you can see that the green outlines. These are conservation areas. These are areas which our people have been conserving. However, it's not legally recognized, but our people have been living and protecting those areas. And then we also have like where there were errors in terms of land titling and demarcation and things like that. So we're capturing all of this and put it in one place that people can view it. So thank you for listening.
Sí, Michael, muchas gracias. Sabemos que han intentado
Thank you,
resumir.
Michael. I know that you have tried to summarize. It was very short time that we have. We are over time. We have gone over time. That's what we're trying to cut time of the last speakers. I apologize. And now we go with the last speaker. We have Felipe, the national coordinator for the Amazon 2.0 project in Amazon Conservation Team. He's going to talk about the experience in Suriname. Go ahead, Felipe. Hello, Andrea. Good afternoon. He's greeting in the different languages. I am Felipe Samper. I'm the technical coordinator of the project of also Amazon Conservation Team, ACT. The structure of the presentation is as follows. First, we're going to talk about the work area, then the main threats, the communities, teams, local monitoring teams and stakeholders in the process, the main achievements, lessons learned and everything else in 10 minutes, hopefully. This is the work area. You can see the communities with whom with which we've worked. These are indigenous communities, Purini, Malawi, and in the center, Matawai. They're African descendants. Right now, the main threats are global dynamics and local dynamics that are interrelated. This is a map of the region. Especially, we're talking about illegal mining, infrastructure, roads, and wood concessions or timber concessions. However, the threats are differentiated depending we're talking about the indigenous communities in the south or the communities in the center, as you can see in the map. These communities in the center, the main threats are mining, illegal logging, and the roads. Whereas in the south, with the indigenous communities, the main threat is the traffic of species and illegal mining, especially in here in the southeast of the country. But the roads is a potential threat. There's a road being built from the center of the country towards the south. So in that context, what are we doing? We are working with 7 indigenous communities, different peoples, Teru, Tepu, Guyana, and another community, Matawai. There are 8 teams of, we call them Amazon Conservation Rangers, ACR, of those teams. 1 team is here in Matawai, and we have other 7 teams. Those 7 indigenous teams, his voice is breaking. 1 team has 5, and the other have, I don't understand, 4 members. Here, these are the locations where they are. It's 7,000 hectares. No, 77,000. Out of those 70,000, 60,000 are indigenous communities, and then the almost 17,000 are Maroon communities. Who are the main stakeholders in the process? By the government, we have been able to sign work agreements and action plans with the main ministries. I'm going to go over this, different ministries, Ministry of Regional Development, Ministry of, or the government agency to monitor forest, Ministry of Territory, Ministry of Agriculture. I want to highlight the participation of the indigenous communities in this process, especially our partners, OEs, and indigenous organization with whom we've done training. They participate in the monitoring. We are trying to come up with a project to protect indigenous peoples and also to formulate or to develop development programs, to establish development programs for communities. We have tried to work with the traditional authorities of the communities, and we have come up with a work plan with them. What have been the main achievements of our project? First, we want to highlight the knowledge generation. Throughout 2020, it's a response to the pandemic. And because we couldn't do any field work, we focused on producing knowledge. So we came up with 7 documents that talk about forest governance, the experiences of monitoring Suriname, the community monitoring experiences in Suriname, the roadmap to strengthen the local monitoring, and I want to emphasize this, the articulation with the national monitoring system. We also produced a document on strengthening the capacities of technical and monitoring capacity of ACRs. Very interesting document on non-timber products from the forest, another document on territory laws, and finally, analysis of the Letitia Pact. I want to focus on one of these points. Before talking about these achievements and the incidents or the advocacy on public policies of one of the few countries where there is no formal recognition of local territories for communities, indigenous communities. That means big limitations for monitoring and to for them to exercise their rights or to defend their rights. So in this category of public policy, we must highlight some agreements and work plans uh, and effective articulation with indigenous organizations, implement a strengthening line, something I mentioned before, with established action plan and with 2 pilot experiences for community monitoring and to articulate with the national monitoring system. Number 4, we report important progress in recognizing the territorial rights for these communities. Right now, we're reviewing some legislation draft, some bill. We also made recommendations about it. And in addition to recommendations, we have suggested that they mark the territories where they're located. We want to highlight the engagement of the government in the support to sustainable production projects and also projects for food sovereignty. We want to highlight the strengthening of the local monitoring team. As I said last year, we came up with a program to strengthen them, and we are implementing it this year. The local monitoring program began in 2012 before the execution of this project, but the project helped encourage and promote these teams. Throughout the project, we have been able to get equipment for those teams. We have been able to train them so they can use drones for their territorial control, and strengthen their cartographic capabilities, and to work with remote systems. Also, trap cameras, information technology strategies. For example, we had a computer center in one of the communities, and finally, the training of the rangers by the police force. That's important progress to recognize their role as forest rangers. And I'm gonna expand on this. In Suriname, we do have different categories of police. One of them are the police that do not have the same functions. They don't play the same roles as an ordinary police officer, but they have authority and they can exercise control on specific activities. That's the kind of training that the police are given to the local monitors so that they can exercise control with authority on some extractive activities in the forest. And that's a very important step towards the formal recognition by the government to recognize these stakeholders. And finally, one more achievement that we want to highlight is an increase of visibility of the work by the forest rangers or range forests. I'm sorry, yeah, the rangers. We have focused on communication strategies, some billboards throughout the city, also radio messages in the national radio, some videos that we are showing on national TV. At the community level, we participated in a video on the work performed by these community forest rangers. The video was shared with all the communities and they have in their own language. Also, the radio messages being broadcasted through a local radio station. We also helped build that. We have a prize for local monitors to increase the sense of belonging the communities have regarding the community monitoring processes, and we also produce booklets based on the documents that we produced last year, especially regarding territorial law. The challenges. It's common to all process. The main challenge last year and part of this year has been the situation caused by COVID-19, which stopped the field activities and delayed the work plans, but we had to adapt fortunately quickly, and we took other actions. As I said, the lack of recognition of territorial rights is one of the main challenges, threats to the work we do with the local monitors. It's territory that is not recognized, but it's theirs. Last year, we had the change of government, and that meant to start out from zero, from scratch with some processes. Some officials left the government, and that delayed our action plan. It was a big delay. Right now, the country is going through an economic crisis, big one. And of course, the government is focusing on trying to get out of the crisis that has a big impact on the budget available and of course their priorities. It's common to other regions, other countries in the region. We have a very weak institution, very weak institutions and lack of interinstitutional coordination. Of course, there is corruption, not only within the government, but also within the communities. But it's more the distribution of benefits and the authority, but we cannot generalize it. Also, the corruption in environmental licenses, and finally, the distribution of the benefits. That's also at the level of the community. Lack of ownership of this monitoring process. The authorities, the traditional authorities don't understand the function, how it helps, how it works to meet their long-term objectives. But we've done some progress. There's been a absence of community planning instruments. That's a huge challenge we face to the extent that communities do not have, as long as they don't have the life plans, there isn't any social agreement or long-term view for these communities. As a result, the dialogue with the government and the articulation of these monitoring practices is very difficult. And finally, lack of coordination amongst different monitoring experiences. There are other experiences taking place, but they don't talk to one another. At least they weren't. And that was a huge challenge. To conclude, I'd like to share with you the lessons learned and the next steps. First of all, we want to highlight that we know that monitoring has to be articulated with the community objectives in the long term. Monitoring, community monitoring shows capacities of control of the territory. It's important to recognize their rights. It's an argument to grant and recognize their rights to the extent that they show the sustainable use of the forest and the capacity to control their territory. Number three, the national system articulation with the community monitoring systems. This coordination needs to take place, but we cannot impose it, but it has to be built collectively. It's a collective process to build knowledge. And finally, we want to highlight the importance of active participation of their organizations by the communities at the local and national level. We, Triana, BITS, mentioning the organizations and locally the organizations that are formed there. The next steps are huge. It's long term also, but we want to achieve the recognition of territorial rights and to mark the collective rights or to chart them with the implementation of the local monitors, the forest rangers. They have the tools and the knowledge. Number two, to implement the roadmap for community monitoring and integration to the national monitoring system. Then the support to the formulation of management and planning instruments for communities. They could be called life plans, environmental plans, territorial plans, whatever they're called. And finally, to form an international work team. I know I'm not international, but it's institutional.
Capacidades como en una gestión efectiva de estos ejercicios. Eso es todo. Muchísimas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, Felipe, y muchísimas gracias a todos los socios que han compartido.
Thank you, Felipe, and everyone who shared with us today. Thank you for sharing your experience. Now we have a very short time for dialogue. Paulina, she will lead the activity. Paulina? Well, thank you very much. I join the thanks Thank you for sharing the monitoring experiences in the territories. We always seek the objective to share the pressures and threats. Right now, I'd like to tell you that this event was recorded and it will be made available in the YouTube channel by UCN. They'll share the link with us in the chat box. Unless there's anybody who would like to intervene some more, you can request the floor by raising your hand. I wrote in the chat box, there were some questions to encourage dialogue. What elements could be useful to face the pressures and threats in the territories? And what are the challenges for community monitoring? So I don't know if somebody would like to intervene. Would anybody like to raise their hand? The questions that were asked were answered in the chat box, but if you should want to intervene, you are welcome to do so. Let's give it a minute. Otherwise, we go to close. We have gone over time, almost half an hour, but it's been very important to hear all these experiences in today's workshop. There's a link where you can find the recording to today's workshop. So unless there aren't any more questions, we move on to the closing works. I'm sorry, closing remarks. Elcio, are you there? So you give us some closing remarks, and then the coordinator will speak. Go ahead, Elcio.
Em nome do nosso coordenador Gregório Dias Mirabal, né, e da minha outra coordenadora, Francinária Soares Baré, coordenadora da COIAB, né, quero agradecer a participação de todos e todas, né, nesse evento, né, que para nós, povos indígenas, é bastante importante, né, principalmente se tratando de bacia amazônica, né. Existe vários tipos de monitoramento, né, que está sendo feito, né, nos territórios indígenas, fora dos territórios indígenas, né, e que nós, enquanto coordenação das organizações indígenas da Bacia Amazônica, também estamos trabalhando, né, a questão do sistema de alerta imediato, né. Né, com as apresentações que foram feitas aqui, muitas apresentações boas, né, de trabalho que está sendo realizado, é possível, né, a gente, todos nós, fazer uma cobertura total, né, de todos os territórios da Amazônia, da Bacia Amazônica, no tocante ao monitoramento do espaço territorial, né. Isso, nessas apresentações, ficou claro, né, que nós já temos muitas informações, né. O que falta talvez, né, a meu ver, é fazer conexões dessas informações, né. E aí, né, a COIAB, né, e a COI, que são as organizações de base, estão, né, também para a implementação, né, de seus sistemas, né. Olhando o que já se tem, né, tanto da parte do sistema de alerta em plano da COI, como também dos parceiros, é possível a gente fazer, né, um bom trabalho nessa área de monitoramento. Mas, como falei desde o início, né, é importante, né, a gente, como implementador...
It's important that as the people who are implementing this project in the indigenous territories, we have to know and also control the information in the area, or the organizations will just collect the data, but what we want is that our organizations and communities can take control of that process and can use that tool so they can do the monitoring of their territories and do the administration in a qualified way of their wealthy resources. So it is important to join our efforts for a good monitoring system in the Amazon basin so we can focus in the strengthening of the indigenous organizations, especially in the territories of the indigenous peoples, because there are the places where we need to do our actions to strengthen these indigenous communities' actions through COICA and through our partners. It is important for us to do this because once we strengthen the community, we strengthen also the actions. And so we can become more efficient in relation to the actions and the quality of our actions. For example, in terms of doing certain kind of denounce and let's say things that are going on which are not legal, and for example oil exploitation, the complaints, the allegations we can do in regarding to those actions, we can make part of those processes in a very strong way, and our actions can really deserve the congratulations for the work that had been presented here by every participant.
Gracias, Paulina. Agradecer a los hermanos y hermanas de COICA por este espacio, por esta oportunidad. Creo que no hay otra cosa que juntar experiencias, no hay que redescubrir de cero. Creo que el compartir, esto es muy rico. Ahora por la pandemia lo hacemos virtualmente. Ojalá haya la oportunidad en un momento dado de hacerlo físicamente. Sé que el tiempo ha quedado muy corto. Transmitir
Time is short. And to show that the work that has been done in many years in our country is very difficult, is a challenge. I'm sorry to the colleagues from APA and others did not have enough time, much time to present, but thanks to COICA, because they are open to listen to our challenges. This has to be some information that is going to be used by the organizations. I believe that the technology is teaching us and is helping us, is supporting us, but I believe that the warnings have their own function, but it is important to empower and to train the indigenous people so they can react and act. So we need to generate some alternatives. We need to strengthen our territories, our lands, but also we need to strengthen the economy. We need to bring alternatives to the territories. Those are challenges. Sustainability is a challenge. The projects work and they end. We conclude the projects, but then what will happen? Some people are asking about the second phase of the Amazon 0.0. We are knocking doors. We would love to work together with COICA in an agenda, long-term agenda, so we can work in a big system of the basin, Amazon basin. And I believe it is very important to articulate it in a unique platform so that we can empower the leaders' capabilities. And for example, in the forest and to count with these systems of information. This capital of information will be available in the next days through COICA and in its grassroots and its base center of, where the information is concentrated. Amazon 2.0 is also preparing the publication regarding all this information put together, and I would like to invite you to the website to check the website where it will be available. Sorry for going beyond the time. Thanks to all the people who participated here, Andrea, Paulina, who facilitated this workshop. Thanks to everyone.
Muchas gracias, Braulio. Entonces damos por terminado este taller.
Thank you, Braulio. This workshop is concluded. Thanks to everybody and the people who participated made it possible. See you soon. Thank you.